stage design at the historic Dolby Theatre in Hollywood was meant to represent humanity, femininity and beauty, but all viewers could see was Trump's distinctive blonde locks. Oscars viewers were left scratching their heads after noticing the stage design bore a striking resemblance to Donald Trump's hair. The president's famous quiff seemed to be recreated in a distinctive design arching over the podium. The arch over the Oscars stage bore a striking resemblance to Donald Trump's famous hairstyle. Trump's distinctive blonde locks appeared to be the inspiration behind the Oscars stage design. Stars packed into the historic Dolby Theatre in Hollywood didn't seem to notice the presidential bonnet. But the eagle-eyed audience at home were quick to pick up on the similarities with Trump's blonde locks. Tom Piakura wrote on Twitter, "I can't be the only one saying this. Anyone else seeing President Trump's hair in the 2019 Oscars stage?" Another asked. A third user joked, "Maybe it is a tribute." The set, which was created by Tony-nominated Broadway production designer David Korins of Hamilton, was supposed to represent inclusion and humanity, femininity and beauty. But all anyone seemed to think about was Trump's barnet. When asked by the Louisiana Times about the resemblance on Sunday, Mr. Korins said, "I don't see that, but I think that people see in artistic endeavors all sorts of things." He added, "You look at paintings and sculpture and architecture and people see what they want to see. The world is filled with hard lines and straight lines and using themes, and I really wanted people to feel like this was an asymmetrical, warm, undulating art installation that was installed in this theater." Meanwhile, likenesses were drawn between the Oscars statues at the back of the stage and Melania Trump's red Christmas trees. The First Lady caught flack during the holiday season for displaying crimson Christmas trees around the White House, with some calling the decorations morbid. One Twitter user joked, "Did they recycle Melania's bloody Christmas trees into the Oscars statues on stage?" Another said, "Dear Lord, so many meltdowns about red Christmas trees, how could they? If you ask me, they were creepier than Melania's trees ever were." Donald Trump blasts Spike Lee over racist hit Oscars speech, read your notes. Donald Trump has accused Spike Lee of using his politically charged Oscars acceptance speech to launch a racist hit on his presidency. The legendary director did not mention the U.S. leader by name but called on voters to mobilize ahead of next year's presidential election. Hitting back this morning, President Trump claimed his policies had done more for African Americans than almost any other president in U.S. history. In an early morning tweet, he said, "Be nice if Spike Lee could read his notes, or better yet not have to use notes at all, when doing his racist hit on your president, who has done more for African Americans, criminal justice reform, lowest unemployment numbers in history, tax cuts, etc., than almost any other pres." Accepting the award for Best Adapted Screenplay for BlacKkKlansman at last night's ceremony, Mr. Lee urged voters to be on the right side of history when making the choice between love versus hate in next year's presidential election. In his speech, which touched on the United States' history of racism and slavery, the director also urged people to do the right thing in the 2020 ballot. Reading from notes, he said, "We will have love and wisdom regained. We will regain our humanity. It will be a powerful moment. The 2020 presidential election is around the corner. Let's all mobilize. Let's all be on the right side of history. Make the moral choice between love versus hate. Let's do the right thing." Mr. Trump did not specify what part of Mr. Lee's speech he considered a racist hit. Speaking with reporters after the Oscars ceremony, the director criticized the president's remarks after a 32-year-old woman was killed by a white supremacist in Charlottesville, Virginia, in 2017. President Trump came under fire from both Republicans and Democrats for his response after a car was driven into a crowd of counter-protesters at a far-right rally. The U.S. leader condemned the violence, but did not single out the white extremist groups involved in the rally. He added the violence had been perpetrated on many sides. Mr. Lee said, "The car drove down that one street in Virginia, and the President of the United States did not reject, refute, did not denounce the Klan, alt-right, and neo-Nazis. This film, whether we want Best Picture or not, this film will stand the test of time being on the right side of history." Mr. Lee had reportedly tried to storm out of the Dolby Theater just after racial drama Green Book was announced as Best Picture at the end of the Oscar show. He then came back to his seat, where he turned his back on the stage during Green Book acceptance speeches. Green Book is based on the true story of an unlikely friendship between a black pianist and his white driver touring the racially segregated U.S. Deep South during the 1960s. Speaking backstage after the ceremony, Mr. Lee recalled that a previous racial drama of his, Do the Right Thing, had failed to earn a Best Picture nomination for the Oscars in 1989, the year that the film Driving Miss Daisy, about a black chauffeur for a white elderly Southern woman, won the award. Responding to a question about his reaction to the win for Green Book, he said, "I'm snakebit. Every time someone is driving somebody, I lose." President Trump regularly claims to have done more to help African Americans than other U.S. leaders.